Heartbeat Alaska is made possible by Kuukpik Carlisle Transportation, your full-service transportation and logistics company.
Heartbeat Alaska is also brought to you by Frontier Flying Service. Thank you, Frontier, for getting Heartbeat Alaska airborne.
1, 2, 3, 4, let's go.
It's Heartbeat.
It's a fabulous show.
Alaska.
Hi, Heartbeat Alaska.
It's Heartbeat. Alaska.
Pull up a chair and enjoy the show.
Hear it from Sitka to Barrow. Gather around for Jeannie's show. It's the Aleut, the Indian, and the Eskimo. It's the Aleut, the Indian, and the Eskimo.
Welcome one, welcome all.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heartbeat Alaska Native News and Native Information. I'm Jeannie Green. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we present part 2 of Nuiqsut, Somewhere Beautiful Over the Horizon. And it is somewhere beautiful. Sit back and relax as we take you to Nuiqsut. Today is the second day of the weekend-long celebration, honoring those families that came before all others to reestablish the village of Nuiqsut in 1973. People came from across the state to honor these pioneers, and many of them spoke to the success of the village corporation and the village as a whole. Several competitive joint venture companies have been formed under Nuiqsut's village corporation, Kuukpik. Companies that are playing an integral role in the oil industry today. These companies, in turn, provide other employment opportunities for local residents.
And there's a lot of work that goes on in the field. So I'm happy to say names like Kuukpik Arctic Catering, who have fed many of us this week, Northern Air Cargo, the Carlisle Transportation Company, and Fairweather Geophysical, True North, Kuukpik Company. All of those have shown themselves to be competitive, and they're now sharing in part of the work that goes forward.
Upinaka ako matigot 1973 me ubaki mityagamit tawda tingut kay kami tawang nga kay walisak tirurok tawda ni ilisimat kublune.
Many people shared stories from days gone by, while others listened in remembrance of a time when 4 canvas walls were enough to call home. A time when driftwood kept you warm and the land and the waters kept you alive.
On your mark, get set, go!
For fun, some of the ladies stepped back in time for a water jug race.
That water jug carry, what you saw, was just a friendly, fun competition. In 1973, the main chores of the children back then was to gather water and collect wood for the tents. So we made it a friendly competition for the ladies and the men that are now grown, but they were children back then. And so what you saw was women carrying water, running to the river, filling up their buckets, and then running supposedly back to the tent with the water. That's what you saw. And that was just a friendly competition, just to reminisce back about the old days of how water was collected.
There was also a sailboat race for all ages. At first, they all seemed to be doing their own thing. A little gust of wind and the race is on. As a fancy sailboat with the white sails starts to gain speed, something unexpected happens. So much for technology. Now it seems to be a race between the biggest and smallest boats. The larger boat seems to be taking the lead, but you can't exclude this little fella from the race yet. And without warning, the larger sailboat runs into the grass, allowing an easy pass by the small boat. What an amazing turn of events. the wind is fickle, and eventually it would blow this little guy right into the tall grass as well. After getting itself unstuck, the larger boat would sail its way to victory. On the other side of Nuiqsut, a softball game between the locals and a handful of employees from the nearby Alpine site is underway. No matter what activities people were busy participating in, they were doing them as a community, as they used to do 30 years ago. Something that brought the entire community together that evening was the drumming and dancing. To top the night off, the band Premium Blend out of Anchorage brought the entertainment for the night.
And I swear on my life, I wouldn't change a thing. Who might you argue? God's plan is still.
Turn it up.
He asks the tough questions. He won't settle for just any answer. They call him the investigator.
So who's throwing the party? What time are you coming home? Will there be drugs there? You know that includes marijuana.
When it comes to getting the facts, his job is never done.
Carmen's with the usual friends. Be back by 11.
Come on. Dad doesn't have to know everything.
Actually, he does.
He asks the questions that help his daughter stay away from drugs. The investigator. He's a dad keeping marijuana out of his daughter's life. You're more powerful than you know.
It's the Aleut, the Indian and the Eskimo. It's the Aleut, the Indian and the Eskimo.
Welcome one, welcome all.
Today, when you look around Nuiqsut, it's easy to see how Western culture has left its mark on Kuukpikmiut. This community sits in the center of activity for oil exploration and is a hub for travelers and slope workers for the oil industry. This constant flow of people in and out of the village has always caused mixed feelings among the locals.
It took a while to get used to, especially during the winter months where a lot of actual constructions are being where also benefit the community, bringing some goods at which lower the cost. But there's, like I say earlier, you have to balance a lot of balancing act needs to be done too. But there's some mixed feeling from my community members. Well, both, but you have to wait to balance the issues.
The issues go much deeper than too much air traffic. The pipeline and oil industry-related activities that take place around Nuiqsut and the surrounding areas have changed the way the Kuukpikmiut subsist.
It's been challenging pretty much for the village on impacts. Impacts, I mean, is social impacts, impacts to the wildlife, impacts to the social behavior of the village. During the vital migration period of the caribou, when it crosses the rivers, they cross in about 200, a herd of 200 to 2,000 caribou all at once. And this migration is very vital to the village. It takes a lot of time and effort to catch these caribou because you're traveling by boat. And when you're out in that area, you're pretty much focused on trying to harvest and catch your hunt. And it doesn't really help when there's two choppers or a plane and a chopper near the area of your harvest because you're in such an intense time of harvesting during the summer. We only have such a short period of window, you might say, of time to harvest our caribou and fish, and to be impacted by choppers and planes and diverting those caribou into other regular migrating areas or regular areas, or the area you're actually hunting and a plane comes over and the caribou notices the plane and goes the other direction away from the river. It gets very upsetting to the hunter as well as the community.
That pipeline in the west side was the Kuukpikmiut area and the Kapooda Bay. Before they would pick a lot of pipeline, we used to have caribous. They would meet from the west side, from the east side, just right down below us, and they would just start going up. Yeah, and then they're not doing that right now because of the pipelines. They're migrating farther up. If they're going to go through the by Umirak, in between here and Umiat, a lot of caribous would start heading east.
What this means for the hunters of Nuiqsut is that they now have to travel further away from their home to get the game.
A lot of people feel that with impacts, with the increased air traffic as well as traffic on the ice roads, animals tend to go a lot farther. So that means the hunter, the subsistence hunter, has to go a lot farther, which puts a lot of wear and tear on his snowmobile as well as his outboard on his boat. So he tends to work more on his equipment than a normal subsistence hunter because he would have to go a lot further than a normal hunter would because of the increased traffic in the air and land to do development and exploration.
the alpine satellite activities. Where Alpine site is now, we had 97 houses harvest caribou prior to Alpine's development. Last year we had 3 houses harvest caribou in that area. The needs to go farther, more times, are increased. We used to depend on about an average area of 100 miles for each hunter. That's been increased to 1,000 miles at this time. Those demands are being put upon our community members. We're not getting any assistance through any means with the fishing devastation, with the caribou issues. I know of families last summer that spent 700 gallons to try to harvest caribou with no caribou being harvested. We were lucky that was a family that had work and could afford to buy the gas. You put that into a family that didn't have jobs, that doesn't have the means to pay for the big ticket items, a new outboard, a new snow machine, those types of things to go the distances that we're required to try to subsist now. And those families are suffering a lot more.
This is a whaling community. This community works the hardest for its muktuk. It has to go out 70 miles away from their families, from their wives and children, from their jobs, and pretty much dedicate themselves as whalers based out on island for 2 weeks to a month before all the whole full quota of 3 whales are met, 4 whales are met for the harvest of 4 bowhead whales to feed the village for the whole year.
The impact of the oil industry has affected the whalers of Nuiqsut as well. Cross Island, a traditional Kuukpikmiut bowhead whaling camp, which sits a few miles off the coast, has been unproductive at times due to offshore drilling taking place during the whaling seasons. The bowhead whales are detouring, often 30 or more miles away from their original migration routes. Again, this means further travel for the subsistence hunters of Nuiqsut.
There's other impacts that we feel impacts to the tundra, because if you damage the vegetation, the animals depend on, the animals will not return. And so we, as Inupiaq, as people of the North, we depend on these cycles of the animals. We depend on the seasons of the animals. We depend on their migration. And if we do anything to alter that migration or that route or alter the schedule of the animals, they'll never return. And, you know, there goes our identity and our self-being as subsistence hunters. And without that identity or knowledge, like I said, I think you're a lost person, and self-identity is real important.
There are times that we'll hear concerns being brought up, and we're actually trying to have the panel address the issues with the industry. So there's a working group that works with the industry to try and balance balance between subsistence and development. So
it's called Kuukpik Subsistence Oversight Panel. It's a panel that is a communication tool between the industry and the village, the subsistence village hunters of the village. And these 7 members go over the studies, the reports of the development or exploration near the village, and gives their inputs and suggestions of disiluding or addressing impacts to the hunters or fishermen of the village.
The Kuukpikmiut and the oil industry have reached many decisions by working together. They realize that the oil industry is here to stay, and although the consequences for the people of Nuiqsut have been many, there are some positive things coming to the village because of the oil industry. Currently, the village runs on diesel, with natural gas being brought into Nuiqsut through Alpine. The cost of operating the village will be considerably less. The oil industry has also provided several people in the village with employment opportunities.
It's very good. As each year goes on, we've introduced more and more training, more job opportunities. Part of our agreement provides for a preference in hiring for shareholders for Kuukpik Corporation for any of the work that goes on in this area. And so based on that, we've constructed, Kuukpik has built an employment and a training program. And we continue to emphasize that and try to get shareholders into different jobs. And then we have the educational component, try to get the kids who are in school now to get interested potentially in college or other higher levels of training, and to be in a position where you can fund that.
There's no question that the oil industry has had both positive and negative effects on the people of the Colville. But many locals are optimistic that these issues can be worked out and a feasible coexistence between the industry and the Kuukpikmiut can be reached.
There's a lot of people that feel that there's a lot more impacts and social changes to the village, more negative than good. But we try to take those opportunities of the jobs, take the opportunities of the scholarships and all those opportunities, you might say, in taking hold of these, taking advantage, you might say, of these things and try to make the best of what's happening around you. That's pretty much the Inupiaq's way has always been, is, to enjoy your fruits of labor and just enjoy the things around you. And try to make the best of them and try to preserve them as they are, and always respect your land and your sea and your elders. That's pretty much, it's always been our way, and we just hope to continue and teach our young ones to carry on those traditions.
Even with the constant air and road traffic, the endless stream of passers through, and the long distances that must be traveled by the hunters, the Kuukpikmiut maintain their culture and traditional practices at a cost. Marjorie Ahnupkana and Carol Cayuse are busy cleaning caribou. Nothing will be wasted on this animal. The meat will be put away and stored throughout the winter. Even the tendons will be removed and used for sinew. The caribou have always been a main staple of the Kuukpikmiut, and I'm sure these ladies have cleaned their share of caribou. As we head up the Nuiqsut Channel to check a couple nets, we pass the fish camp where Leonard grew up, learning the subsistence ways. Subsistence fishing is still very much a part of the Kuukpikmiut's livelihood. All up and down the Nuiqsut you can find nets strung out along the banks. As the day disappears, the weather begins to change. The fog settles on the Nuiqsut, and it's time to return home. Another day has passed, a day of living off the land, a day of coexisting with the oil industry, and a day of remembering who they are in a world that is forever changing before the eyes of the Kuukpikmiut.
Just tell her parents you weren't watching her because you were getting stoned. They'll understand.
It's the Aleut, the Indian and the Eskimo. It's the Aleut, the Indian and the Eskimo.
Welcome one, welcome all.
It's been 30 years since the people of Nuiqsut re-established the village in 1973. 30 years of living off the land and waters of the area. 30 years of learning how to work with the oil industry. 30 years of respecting the land, and above all, the elders who had the courage to bring their families in the Colville for a new life. It's been 30 years since the new beginning of Nuiqsut, but it's been thousands of years of tradition that have kept the Kuukpikmiut together.
For Nuiqsut's future, I think it looks bright. I think it looks like it's promising. Hopefully to continue this strong subsistence way of life, to continue to harvest the caribou, harvest the fish, and harvest all the animals and mammals that we live on, especially the bowhead whale, to continue that strong subsistence way, as well as enjoy and learn the new technologies of the Western society in today's world. You have to invest and get more education and training into the development and exploration fields, to teach the outsiders and the visitors about our goals and missions as a community. But I think the future looks bright for Nuiqsut's youth and Nuiqsut's people, as long as it keeps on doing what it's been doing past 30 years, is hold on to its heritage and its past and be a strong part of that past.
It was good. Everybody knew each other. I sure miss it. If I could go back, I'd go back any day. If I could teach my grandkids, you know, what do we go through, I'd go back.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this two-part special, Nuiqsut. Someplace beautiful over the horizon. Next week, we present Diomede, Part 1 and 2, back by popular demand. Thank you so much for joining me. You are the best, and we create this program just for you. God bless you. We'll see you then next week.
Go